Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth interview of British Science Week and our final interview of the whole series, where we are delighted to be interviewing four engineers from Thales. And today I'm joined by Bridge, who works in cloud engineering. Now, for those of you who don't know, my name is Scott and I work at Primary Engineer, and this is the Leaders Award competition, where we ask the question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? Pupils from the ages of 3 to 19 anywhere in the UK can join, and every single person who takes part receives a graded certificate from a real life engineer, just like the ones we interview. Entries have been arriving from across the UK, so remember and get yours sent to Primary Engineer HQ when you're finished. The deadline for submissions is the 22nd of March. Now, as part of these interviews, we've been speaking to engineers who work on loads of different projects, all of them showing the wonderful, interesting, and exciting things that happen when you work in engineering. Although we do host the interviews live, you can catch all the recordings on our YouTube channel. Now, our special guest is going to start with a 10-minute presentation all about what he does, and then we're going to open up to the audience for questions. If you do have a question, just type it in the chat box in Teams. We unfortunately can't receive audio from the audience, so if you do have a question, just type it in. But for now, let's hand over to our wonderful special guest, Bridge.
Thank you, Scott. I'm just going to share my screen. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Brijesh Soni. So I am a cloud engineering lead for Thales UK. So I'll go a bit into detail of what that is a bit further down. It's a little bit about me. So I am from, which I think a lot of you may not recognize that picture. It's a lovely picture, but I'm from the Lake District. That's where I grew up and I went to school. Bits about me. So I'm a big Liverpool fan, which I know we didn't do too well yesterday, but generally, or even this season, but generally we have been doing quite well over the last few years. I'm also a big cricket fan. I used to play for Cumbria County and Lancashire as well, and now I have moved into coaching. So I coach football and I coach cricket for my son's teams as well. A bit about me in terms of career. So I started off at BT. So I think a lot of you may have heard of BT, Virgin, and then onto Sky, where I worked on quite a lot of the systems that you would have seen, like Sky Go and buying Sky online and being able to view your bills online and remote record online. That was all me. So if any of that doesn't work, you can blame me on that one. And then finally onto Thales. So Thales, I started off on a drone project, but and that was trying to get drones to fly around the country. And in COVID, we even got a drone to fly some health equipment to some of the islands in Scotland. So that was an interesting thing there. So a little bit into Thales. So Thales is where I'm at now. So again, Thales I've been with for about 4 years now. Before that, Sky for 14. But not many people would have heard of Thales. But you do realise when you see this slide here where Thales is actually involved. So if you see from space from air to in-flight systems on an airplane, from military to submarines, Thales is absolutely everywhere. And you will have interacted with some kind of Thales technology in some times in your life. So like you said, 2 out of 3 aircraft. So if you've been on an airplane, you probably would have been some kind of Thales technology on there. If you've actually played some of the films on an airplane, that probably was Thales technology as well. So it does touch absolutely everywhere. So if you look at it, 80,000 employees across the world in 68 countries. So really big company involved in many things. So some of the things that I have been doing. So if you look at, but all of these companies need and have the need for web applications and websites. So you guys would have used things like TikTok, things like YouTube, and they all go down a very similar process of what you're seeing on your screen here. So it starts off with an idea. So you see the guy in the corner with his hand up going, yep, I've got an idea. Then everyone and the team pulls together information to say, what do we actually need here? what is going to be good. So if you look at the TikTok example, it would have been, we want to be able to share videos, or we want to be able to share user-generated content. With Sky, it was very much, we want to build an application where people can view sports online and movies online on their apps and so on. So that is the information gathering. Then you have to come up with a plan. How are you going to do it? What is it going to do? How is it going to work? And then you have someone called, or a team called the UX and design, so user experience and the design team. So they will come up with some really good ideas and concepts to say, look, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to work. And you can even go and test that with your customer and say, is this good? And then finally, this is where it comes into the engineering space. So sometimes web design is also in engineering, but with the web development is where I very much get involved in. My teams build using code. So this is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which you may have all been touching or using in your school time. And we build out the application, test it, and then launch it to the customer. But with all of this, we need somewhere to put it. So this, you can't just keep it on your laptop. You can't just keep it on your phones. You need somewhere to put it while you're building it, because you'd be more than one person building it. There'll be a group of people building it. And you need somewhere where once you finish building it, so your customers, or the people that you're trying to get to let them try and access it. So again, going back to your TikTok and YouTube trying to approach, you need it accessible on the internet. So how do you do that? So that's the bit where my new role around cloud comes in. So this was very much what I used to do, and this is where it's going to get to. So these are some of the older options for cloud. So you may hosting options anyway. So these are some of the old things. So on the left, far top left, you'll see some really old disks. So the disks were literally the size of an office. So people used to store information and store things on there. Then it got a little bit better. So you see the colorful compact, or the floppy disks there, but you needed so many of them because some of the applications were so big. So you needed hundreds of these things. Then it got slightly better. So you got compact discs there. So you needed a few, still needed a few of them, but not as many as the floppy disks. And then we moved on to servers. Now, servers are where quite a lot of people still use a lot of servers. So this is how you would access a website normally. This is how you would. It can either be shared, dedicated, or BP hosted, which I'll go into a bit later. But it means that you need a real server, so somewhere real where you can put all your stuff where people can access. Now that becomes a bit of a problem if there is a fire, if you need to add more really quickly and you've got loads of people coming onto your website. So this is where cloud really much comes into play. So this is where we are with cloud. So I think with what you guys would potentially use is Apple iCloud, you may have heard of, OneDrive, Google Drive. These are all places that are in the cloud, or storage areas that are in the cloud that you can actually use and utilize. And what happens is, as soon as you reach a limit, you can quickly ramp up. So one of the advantages is easily upgradable. Another one, it's lowering costs. So if you add another server, a real server, that costs a lot of money. And every time you add a server, you need someone to look after it, someone to maintain it, and so on. In the cloud, this can be done automatically, and it's all virtual. So another server's added within seconds rather than months, because it doesn't take ages to buy it and get someone to train it to use it. It's literally a click of a button, and then you've got another server there. It's always up. So even if a real server falls down, it's gone. Yeah, you've got to then get a team there to get it back up again. In a cloud, you can just click a button, it's always up. So that always means it's accessible all the time. So everything that you will see now going forward will end up being a lot less of this and there'll be a lot more of this. So going forward with the things that you guys will be working on will be very much cloud related. So anything web wise, anything development wise, you will be using cloud all the time.
What do you love about your job?
I love the fact that there's something different every day. Yeah, so it's not the same thing every day. You don't walk in and you have your breakfast or you have your cup of tea. There's different problems every day, and they're good problems. And you get to work with different people, different projects. So not just on the air side, but also on the security side, and you learn different. So that's the biggest part of it. That's the thing I enjoy the most.
Well, you mentioned there that you get to work with lots of different people. We've got a question here from Bryony, and Bryony asks, how many people are part of your team?
So in my team around, there are 20 people in the team, but we work with hundreds and hundreds of people across all the projects. All the different things that I talked about on the Thales slide is where is the kind of people we work with.
So we've got some questions about the cloud coming in actually, and this question comes in. It says, "Does the cloud have backups?"
Of course, it does. But again, these are all things that you do with the cloud provider itself. So you can set everything. So you can say, look, I want to back up every day. Yeah, at this time, or I want to back up 100 times a day. You can literally set a limit of when you want your backup to happen, and it will happen automatically with the system that you're using.
And this question again about the cloud comes from Omar. What would you like to improve on the cloud?
So that's an interesting question. So the bits that I'd like to improve are probably around getting more visibility around the new things that are coming. Because with everything engineering wise, things develop and change quite quickly. It's how you get access to that the new things that are coming along. I think a lot of people try and share that information, but things change so fast. It's so hard to keep up to date with everything.
Yeah, it must be quite exciting, but at the same time, a little bit frustrating to try and keep on top of everything.
Yes.
So we've got a few questions about yourself now, Bridge. This one was asked by quite a few people, but this one comes from Tregony Primary School in Cornwall. What made you want to become an engineer?
So it started off with my dad. So my dad was an engineer. So it's kind of like he slightly pushed that way when you're a little one. But for me, it was more. I always like taking things apart and putting them back together. So I always got told off for taking the TV apart, which I did a few times, and then trying to put it back together, and it didn't work, which was the funny part. But we did get there in the end, and we fix it. Uh, but it was more the fact that I like taking things apart, putting it together, and trying different things.
And in terms of taking things apart and seeing how they work, you mentioned at the start that you sometimes face different problems every day, and it can be quite exciting and the variety of what you change. This question comes from Lamima, and they ask, "Can you tell us about an engineering problem that you have successfully solved?"
Yeah. So imagine Sky. We worked only 2% of our people to buy things online using a Sky website. Yeah, so every time we wanted to buy an upgrade to Sky, only 2% of people that own Sky would actually use the website to upgrade.
Oh, wow.
So as an engineering team, we came up with a new system and on a website to actually change that. So we improved using the techniques that I showed around the web experience and design. We came up with a whole new system, whole new website, and that moved to over 50% of the Sky's customer base started using the online systems to buy and upgrade everything online.
So it went from 2% to 50%. Wow.
And that was within a year and a half. So that was really quick.
Well, we've had a few questions about the projects that you've worked on, and I'm going to pick a handful to pull them into one. What has been your most challenging project, and what one was surprisingly easy?
So most challenging, I'd say, was that Sky one where we're trying to increase the number of people buying stuff online, only because it touched everything in the whole company. Yeah, to every process, everything from the engineers to actually being able to fulfill that order online as well. Um, that was the most challenging. The easiest one was actually the drone piece. So
All right.
it was it was interesting because we wanted to do something it was during COVID lockdown. We needed to find a way of getting medical supplies to some of the remote islands in
Hmm.
Scotland, and this was done. So we managed to find a drone that could get there, and the drone was flying itself. So it wasn't us flying the drone.
All
We
right.
would program the drone to fly, land, and then come back again. So it's
That's
surprisingly a lot easier than I thought that was.
tell the drone where to go and it does it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was mostly the planning that we had to organize. Once you'd organized the planning, the actual execution was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
So we've got loads more questions coming in. This question comes from Katie Horlock, and Katie asks, "Are you currently helping to work on anything new, anything brand new?"
I am at the moment, but it's top secret, so I'm not. I'm not. Unfortunately, Katie, I'm not allowed to say anything about
Watch this space.
it.
So this question comes from Lucy, and Lucy asks, "How many years have you been an engineer?"
So this kind of like gives away how old I am as well. So it's over 25 years.
All right. So you've probably how much has because you now work in cloud and you showed us things like the CDs and the floppy disks. How much has it changed in 25 years?
Oh, massively. So if you imagine, like when I first started, it took ages to do anything. So, so coding was a lot slower, processes were a lot slower. Now it's just so quick. You can do things instantly rather than anything else, and we expect it. Because you imagine that if as people now, as my kids now expect everything to be touchscreen, everything to work instantly and turn on instantly. Yeah. Before, you turned the TV on, it took about half an hour to warm up before it actually turned on. You could see something. So it's the expectation now is things work quicker and faster and instantly.
Well, I definitely think that. I think how come this? I've clicked the button. Why hasn't this started already yet? So it's definitely becoming the norm.
I,
So
I like that. I just also want to know how much money have you earned? That's why.
well, your colleagues who we interviewed earlier in the week did say that engineering is a well-paid profession. So for those of you out there who are thinking about becoming engineers, there's definitely it's definitely a good path to follow.
It certainly is, and I think if you're serious about it and you know what you want to do, and you're it's a if you, it depends how far you want to go in life. You can be successful in anything you do, anything that you put your mind to, and you can earn whatever amount of money that you want to. Contractors within the engineering space earn thousands a day.
Oh,
That
wow.
yeah. So that just
Ah,
what you can earn.
okay. I'm away to retrain, I think. So we've had this question set in, and I think it's about the competition that all the pupils are taking part in.
Yeah.
What would you do if you had to create a product which solves a problem? How would you start?
So I would actually use the process that you saw on my screen earlier. So start with the customer in mind, yeah, or the thing that you're trying to solve. So if someone wants that problem solved, then think of who that customer actually is or that person actually is. And then you can look at how you're going to actually help that person or customer. And you can develop or create something that would actually help them.
That's some good advice to start thinking about the person that has the problem. How is this going to help them, and what do they need from it?
Yeah.
So we've got some more questions coming in. This question, because I know people might now be thinking they want to become engineers. How long does it take to become an engineer?
So if you're studying, you study and do that via the normal route, so via degrees and college and so on. you could start right now. So it doesn't, being a developer or being someone that can code and so on, you can start right now. There's loads of online courses. There's immersive camps that you can go on. There's summer training that you can do as well. But to actually start building a website or building an app, all the materials there online for anyone to actually use and start doing. To go and do it.
That is pretty good. Yeah, just go out and try it because you never know what's going to happen.
You
And
you learn
sorry.
more. You learn more from doing than actually thinking about it. So just go and do it.
So we've got some more questions coming in. I quite like this question actually. This question says, would you make something that is expensive, like a wheelchair or a plane, in a cheaper version if you were to come up with it yourself? Would you make something that already exists much cheaper, or would you try and make something brand new?
Again, depends on customer. Again, is there an actual person that wants it? Yeah, if there is a demographic, so if you're thinking, okay, there's, right now, if you look at the situation, all the prices are going up, taxes are going up. Is it a good time to introduce a cheaper version of something? Potentially. So you just then got to find the right product or the right thing to do to actually achieve that. So it's not a bad idea, but really make sure you've done your research and there is an actual need to doing that before you go and do it.
That's some pretty good advice. We've got some more questions coming in, and this question. So you've talked about some of your most challenging projects and also some that are surprisingly easy. But what do you think is the best thing that you've made?
So the best thing, my favorite thing was actually at Sky when we did remote record. So this is when the first time ever you could press your phone and it would send a recording from your phone to your box at home. So it was an exciting thing for me because that was the first thing I worked with Sky, and I saw it working, which was also a good thing. And then once it was nice to get feedback from customers as well. So like I had millions of customers come back and go,
Wow.
they love this. So that was a good thing. So that was my favorite.
That is pretty good. Yeah, I would quite like millions of people to say this works really well. Well done.
Yeah. But
So when you're working on a project like that or something like the drone project, especially considering that was done sort of during some of the lockdowns, how many people work on the same project at once? That question comes in from Danielle.
but this is good. So with engineering projects, you can have thousands of people working on the same project. Yeah. Depending on how big it is and what you're trying to do, you can have thousands of people working on it, or it can
Wow.
be a really small team. So the capability is there, and especially with cloud and all the app technologies that you've got there, you can be depending on what you're trying to do. You can have small amounts of people or massive amounts of people, and it can all run successfully.
So definitely vary. And like you said, one of the good things about the job is how it varies. So project sizes as well.
Yeah.
So we've had a few people asking this. So being an engineer and working at Thales also is very exciting. But what are some of the cons at the job? What are some of the hardest things about being an engineer?
Well, you know what? I struggle with that one because I like all aspects of it. Yeah, I like dealing with people, I like dealing with technology, and I like solving problems. So it's it, I like all of it. Unfortunately.
I think that's a perfectly good answer if you're asking me. So we've still got time for some more questions. So everyone out there, if you're sitting on a question, please type it in. But again, this question comes for yourself. Do you still watch cricket? And if so, what team do you support?
To yeah, to Lancashire is the local team I support. India is India and England from an international point of view. But I still play cricket. I still watch cricket. Yeah, still enjoy it.
So you still get plenty of time to do your hobbies when you're an engineer as well.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm a cricket coach as well, so I get to coach football and cricket, so it's good fun.
So we've got some more questions coming in. This question comes from Rafaela. Did you help develop virtual reality, or do you use tools like that when you're working to test things out?
Yeah, there's a lot of 3D. I worked on that Sky, so that was a new thing. But again, I'm not sure many people use as much 3D as possible. But VR was the next step from that. So we did work on elements of virtual reality. It's going to be used. It is being used a lot more for exploratory,
Oh.
like medical reasons. So if people want to try things, or put themselves in a scenario, from an air point of view, trying to work out the controls and see what works in an airplane, things like that. So when you're trying to simulate an environment, it's a good thing to use. Slowly moving there, but it depends. I'm still a bit unsure on whether 3D and VR will move in a similar direction.
Ah, it's another one for the future. So we've got another question, and I quite like these ones. The first one comes from Caroline Willis. How often do you use something that you've developed yourself? So surely you must have been watching Sky TV and upgrading it yourself using the websites.
Yeah, so Sky Go was another one. So again, all of them things we use online all the time. So yeah, most of the things developed at Sky, I still use now. So yeah.
I quite like that. And we've got another question coming in. Have you considered any problem impossible?
No, there's always a way to solve the problem. It may not solve it 100%, but there is a way of solving most problems.
So I think that that's a good way to look at it as well, because everyone out there's got to look for a problem to come up with an engineering solution for, so nothing's impossible.
No,
We've got time for a few more questions. This one again is from Danielle. How long does it take to plan a project? So once you've got people working on it, as you said, sometimes thousands, but how do you plan through that? That diagram in your presentation was really
yeah.
useful there.
So this is the important part is having an idea that it's good to go. Yeah, and it doesn't need to have every element of it good to go, but it should be enough so you can tell a story and then you can get people understanding that story. If you're still trying to get people on board with something, especially when there's a lot of people on there and everyone's trying to understand a bit of it and they don't quite get that and they don't quite get that, you're never going to get a load of people to work together. Everyone's got to be on the same page and everyone's got to know the direction that you're going in. It's like trying to go on a school trip. Yeah. If everyone gets on the same bus and moves on and goes to the same location, you're laughing. But if everyone decides to go on different buses and go to different places, you're not going to get there. So it's the same.
So when you've come up with a plan, you've started to deliver the project, and it's been a success. This question asks, do you celebrate when you finish a project?
We celebrate all the way through. So the problem is, look, some of these projects last a long time. So some of them could be years and years and years. Some of them could be months. And it's really important that you celebrate each success, not just the one at the end, because that is where the team can get, especially when you're going for a long time, teams can get bored and teams can get like demotivated if you don't tell them that they're doing well and they're celebrating that success while you're going along.
Yeah, always fine because there's successes throughout it. It's not just finishing the project, it's doing it as well.
Yes.
Well, I think we've got time for one last question, and there's a question from Bryony, which I think is a perfect way to end it. What has been the best decision you've ever made?
So for me, I think joining Thales was a very good
Oh,
decision.
wow.
Um, joining, being, but the biggest look for me, it's moving around and learning has been the best part of what I've done in my career. So if you look at the Virgin, Sky, Thales, every time I wanted to learn something different, I've gone and done it. So don't be afraid to learn things. Don't be afraid to try things. But the important part is to actually try it. Yeah, give
I
it a
think Yeah, I think that is some excellent advice to end on. I want to say thank you very much to everyone out there, but a huge thank you to Bridge for joining us and helping inspire all the engineers in the making out there, because it is your turn now to come up with your own engineering ideas. Remember and send them to us once you've got them designed so we can get our certificates sent out to you, and then we'll hopefully see you at our in-person exhibitions at the end of the school year. Remember, this interview will be uploaded to YouTube so you can rewatch it in full or share it with a colleague. And then don't forget to send your entries in by March 22nd. But for now, I want to say thank you again to Bridge and thank you to everyone out there. Remember, if you were an engineer, what would you do?